And welcome back to 310 to Left. I am not Tom Karen, your host. Tom is a man of many hats. I am a man of just one. But this is 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford Dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. I am Alex Speier of the Boston Globe, Tom Karen impersonator for the day while TC is away on secret assignment. And more importantly, I am joined by the great Will Middlebrooks, who seems more comfortable chatting with me now than he did as a teenager hitting $1.50 for the Lowell Spinners in 2008. Will, how you doing?
Yeah, that wasn't great, man. I was 19 years old and fighting for my life. That's so funny you bring that up, because that's I always talk about, that was kind of like a turning point in my career. And it was early. It was when I was 19, but I'd barely used a wood bat before. All of a sudden I'm playing against guys who were playing in the College World Series, and I'd only seen a handful of guys that even threw 90 at that point. And I'm facing everybody that throws 90 to 95. So Gary DeSarcina, my manager, changed my entire career, life, trajectory because of one meeting he had with me after a tough 3-week period to start short season A-ball.
I mean, the DSAR conversation is a great one, and I remember I've talked with him. I talked with him about this back when you were making your big league debut. He recalled that you were that he was calling you in for that kind of that kind of come to religion moment as you were kind of flailing around and you were kind of slinking in sweatpants. I don't think that a manager can criticize a player for wearing sweatpants anymore, since I don't know what your kids are like. My kids never go a day of the year without wearing sweatpants at this point. But yeah, how did managerial intervention in a kind of career reshaping fashion work back in 2008?
He challenged me, and I was so caught up in I'm uncomfortable because I felt like a fish out of water, right? Like, it was number one, pro ball was a culture shock for me. I grew up in a really small town in East Texas, right? And now I'm playing with guys from all over the world. I'm being challenged. I think the biggest thing was I'd never failed before in my life. And I didn't know how to fail, and I didn't know how to bounce back and dig and scratch and claw my way out of a slump. I'd never been in a slump my entire life, ever, to that point. And I was 19 years old, and I was doing it in pro ball. And it was embarrassing because I had just gotten drafted, and I just wanted to play well because that's all I'd ever known. And he gave it to me pretty good in the office and really woke me up and challenged me. And I think that was the coach's kid in me. My dad coached high school ball for 40 years, and I was always open to criticism. I've always been coachable, and sometimes you need to be challenged man to man to kid, whatever you want to call me back then. But he pushed me, and it was conversation that I've always told him. And I remember texting him, a week into my big league time and thanking him for playing a really big role, even though it was 4 years previous to getting me to the big leagues.
Yeah, well, it is amazing to me, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do. You were supposed to, as a teenager, going into pro ball from, especially then, like the showcase circuit then wasn't what it is now, right? Like you weren't spending the year like facing 95 for 3 months of the summer.
For multiple reasons. We didn't have the money for me to play travel ball. So I wasn't traveling to Dallas to play with these teams. Some of these teams like Dallas D-Bat and the Dallas Tigers, and those were the big teams when I was growing up that wanted me to come play tournaments. But a lot of those were during the fall, also during football season. And I played all sports. So it was a year-round thing for me. Yeah. And I wasn't going to miss some part of my school sports, trying to play for a state championship. I wasn't going to leave to go play travel ball. And then we honestly didn't have the money for it. I played American Legion in my hometown. That was my summer ball experience. And it was great. Luckily, we had a lot of talent in that area, and we had other good players who had come from that system. So they were scouting. So I was able to be seen because I simply, to your point, I didn't go play travel ball. We couldn't do it.
It is amazing for me to think about that context of you as a 19-year-old kid trying to figure it out in Lowell, because again, that's what you're supposed to do. And it brings to mind for me two things about the game right now. One is the fact that there is not short season ball for players to be able to make that adjustment, especially high school kids, like to be able to find their footing. Like there are a couple of Red Sox kids who were drafted pretty high in the 2023 draft. Naz Zanatello and Antonio Anderson, second and third round selections that year. And both of them, because there was no Lowell Spinners, right? They both were assigned straight to full season A ball last year, and they were out of their depth. But and so it looks awful. It looks awful, and you feel bad for kids who go through the depths of the struggles that they did. But that's kind of what they're supposed to do.
It's kind of
Because
what the low levels are
yeah,
for, right?
yeah,
You have
yeah,
your handful of elite players, whether they're high school guys that are, the Marcelo Myers and the Roman Anthony's and Christian Campbell was a college guy, but these young guys who can shoot through the system like they have at the trajectory of that, because they have an elite set of tools and an elite understanding of the game and themselves. But to your point, yeah, A ball is supposed to be where you go struggle and you figure out who you are as a player and you figure out your process of, how do you get out of a slump? How do you learn how to be a teammate? How do you come to the field every single day? See, that's part of short season ball. It's a half season, right? You play 80 games and you spend the other half of the season in Florida at the spring training complex in extended spring training, which is not the same as going and playing night games every day in front of fans where it sucks to not be good. And so it's a big learning curve. To your point, those kids did have it tough. They didn't have the luxury of playing that 80 game season. They kind of dipped their toes into what pro ball is. They're straight into the 142 game minor league season. So that's got to be tough.
The other thing that it brings to mind, though, thinking back to 19-year-old Will Middlebrooks, and I want to point out, actually, I'm going to offer the tangent. That first day that I interviewed you and met you for the first time, you also did have a walk-off in the Futures at Fenway game. So that was a walk-off single that was a nice that kind of put you on a very good trajectory for the rest of that season in the New York Penn League.
That wasn't long after the conversation with DSAR.
Yeah,
that was maybe a week or so after, and who were we playing? Hudson Valley, maybe. I think it was the Rays, the
Sounds
Renegades.
Right.
And
Sounds
I
right.
I doubled off the monster in that game, and then I had the walk off in extras, and that was, like I said, a week to 10 days probably after that conversation with DSAR, and that was the first day I obviously, this is a result-driven sport for fans and for the media, but it's also for the player's confidence when you're that young too. And to get the results and get them in a big spot in a game, and by the way, we're playing at Fenway Park in front of a lot of fans. Yeah. That kick-started me through the rest of the minor leagues to get to the big leagues. It's funny how one game, one conversation can make that big of a difference, but that's how it works sometimes.
Well, the other thing that it brings to mind, though, thinking about the struggling in short season A ball, Will Middlebrooks is a 19-year-old, is like it gives some kind. And you were a big leaguer, right? Like you emerged over the course of the next few years as a top as a top prospect, and then a big leaguer, and then an everyday big leaguer, and then went through got to experience that arc. But how crazy is it to you to see someone like a 20-year-old Roman Anthony, when you think about someone who is 1 year older than you and yet already knocking on the door and kind of tearing up AAA, how wild is it to see some of the young talent, to see young talent explode through the minor leagues like that?
Well, young players are much more advanced now, just with the tools they have, the resources they have, not only in pro ball, but in college. Some of these D1 programs might as well be professional baseball, the way they run their systems and their programs. But even high school kids with the summer programs and everything they have, there's just so much more resources for these kids to grow and learn and understand their swings and their pitches. And they're able to start that process before they get to pro ball. And, I was one of those guys who played in kind of like the end of the old school era, and then the last 2-3 years of my career, it was really starting to switch over to be heavy analytics. And 2018 was my last year, and that was really when guys were starting to watch video, and they had different programs where they could, like the Hawkeye system and all this stuff where you could break down every small detail of your body movements and everything that you do. That was really coming about my last year in the big league. So I didn't fully get to experience what players have now. But I did get to play in like those years that were like the blending of old and new, which was a little confusing because you would have teammates who were completely bought into the analytics, and a lot of us were just like, I don't trust that stuff. Like, we don't know enough about it. I don't. Why would I swing up that? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it was such a weird time to be playing baseball between 2016 and 2018 when things were really starting to flip in baseball.
Will, were you intentionally trying to set us up with a great segue to our next guest?
You know what? I work in media now, Alex, and this is part of my development as a broadcaster.
Well, Will has just done a great job of identifying this really interesting time in baseball, 2016 to 18, that's very relevant to our next guest. We're about to have Rob Refsnyder on, outfielder for the Boston Red Sox, whose career in a certain way underwent a kind of transformation, or at least was at a very interesting inflection point during that exact same time. So, like, your career was kind of dovetailed in a very interesting hand in glove way around that. And we'll dig in on that with Rob about why that was a kind of transformative time, not only across baseball, but also specifically for him. In at the start of, he now has the benefit of kind of 8 years of experience since that moment in time to think about how it influenced his path moving forward. But Will, great job on that. We will be back after the break on 310 to Left to talk to Rob Refsnyder in this well set up segment by Will Middlebrooks. Back on 310 to Left, joined now by Red Sox outfielder Rob Refsnyder, who's off to a pretty spectacular start to the season. Rob, how's it going? How do you like the art that's going on in your hotel room? How's the morning treating you?
Yeah, hotels are great. Got some nice abstract art behind me. So no, it's good. I'm a morning guy, so this is a couple hours past my wake up, so all good.
Does that like that? That's a strange concept, right? Like, is in if you're a morning person, adjusting to the rhythms of baseball seems very unnatural, given that about 70% of games take place at night. Is that an adjustment? Are you a nap person in the middle of the day? How do you account for the timing of how your body wants to work versus when your job takes place?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a pretty boring guy. In the off season, I go to sleep at like 8:30. I get up pretty early, so yeah. AC and I were joking about the marathon game. Like that game is totally up my alley, playing at 11 o'clock. So I'm all good for that one. But yeah, I mean, a lot more coffee, a lot more caffeine, and I try to sneak in a nap if I can, just a quick one. Everyone's been talking about the drink a cup of coffee right before the nap, then 30 minutes, and yeah, it's as good as everyone says.
So I think a lot of this has to do with being a dad. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
my same schedule as like when I'm on the road, I try to sleep in when I don't have the family with me, but it's I get up, you either want to talk to them before school or it's just like ingrained into you at this point to be up early. So it doesn't matter how late you stay up, you're still up. I'm the same way.
If I get to 8 o'clock, like that is
That's
sleeping
sleeping
in for me.
in.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Rob, as we mentioned, you're off to a tremendous start this season. You've been in a really good place. Like your across the board numbers have been excellent, and it's kind of interesting to take stock of that while we're sitting here in Toronto, right? Because you were briefly a member of the Blue Jays. You were
Terrible, terrible.
Well, I mean, that was a really interesting career inflection point, right? Like you had been a highly regarded prospect coming up through the Yankees organization, and you were kind of part of the wave of the baby bombers, and then like things didn't go like how you were then traded by the Yankees in the middle of the 2017 season at a time when you were struggling, and you come to Toronto. That's your first organizational change. Like how jarring was that experience? What we're talking about 8 years ago now, to have that organizational shift occurring at that point in your career.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm sure Will can talk about it. You get drafted by a team, you get developed, you build some relationships, some friendships, and then you get fortunate enough to make your debut with the team, and then to get traded by them. it's a big culture shock, and you're just trying to figure it out, right? You know, what happens to my rent back in the city or in Scranton? I think I was in Scranton. Do I know anybody on the next team I'm on? Do I know any of the coaches, the staff, the front office? So a lot of human reactions, and you're just trying to figure it out all at once while playing baseball. When the Blue Jays picked me up, I think I was starting to make the transition to the outfield, but unfortunately, one of my favorite players, I think Tulo, got hurt. He had a really strange injury running to first base, I think. So they kind of threw me back at second base, and I think mentally I had already made that shift to like, oh man, I get to play a position I'm a little bit more comfortable at, and I was really looking forward to it. And then getting thrown back into, oh man, I have to go play the infield again, where I just wasn't as comfortable. It was, looking back at it, it was very nerve wracking, I guess.
So I guess at that point in your career, was there like the feeling of, okay, I'm going to find a position, I'm going to be still trying to be an everyday player? Because obviously you fast forward to the last couple of years and it's role player, which I always tell people is it's an art. Like it is not easy. But if you have guys on a team that can do it, it's really special. And the Red Sox have two of them, and you and Romy. So I guess just like talking about I'll call it an art of pinch hitting, an art of being a guy who plays a couple days a week and still being successful. I know the buildup of your career to that point has kind of got you there, but like, what's part of that routine like for you?
Yeah, when I was younger, especially that time, if we're talking about 2017, I felt like in such a twilight zone of my career. I was playing every day in the minor league level, and then going to the major league level, filling in for injuries, playing a couple different positions, trying to figure out that whole, I guess, role was a challenge at first, definitely. But I met Steve Pearce in Toronto, and I was amazed by how he kind of went about it, how prepared he was, but also how you know, trying to think of the right word, but just so even keeled about it. And I learned a lot from Steve that year. And but yeah, it was a strange time in my career, and I was really just trying to figure a lot of different things out. So whenever I come back to this city, especially, it's definitely a lot of memories come back of some challenging times in my career, to be honest.
I get it. I get it. And you mentioned Steve Pearce. Were there any other guys that played a big part in who you are as a player?
Yeah, when I was younger, um, Brian McCann and Brett Garner took great care of me. Matt Holliday. So it's really cool kind of playing against Jackson now. Just I remember seeing Jackson come in the clubhouse, and my swing was terrible, especially during that time. And I remember seeing Jackson hit with Matt, and I think I was with Austin Romine in the cages, and I like whispered in Romine's ear. I was like, "This kid has a much better swing than I do right now." And I was just watching, Jackson and Matt's relationship, and I was like, "Wow, that's really really special." Matt, really was a great example of like how to be a ball player and a father and juggle all of that and still have great time for younger guys like me. And I know he really took Aaron under his wing that year and really helped him just I'm sure become the leader that he is today. Yeah, so those guys kind of come to mind.
Well, it's super interesting to me because you mentioned you just reeled off a bunch of players, which that is about as important as mentoring can be, right? Like being able to have guys who are experiencing the same things that you are relating to you. At the same time, I feel like as we contrast this time with that time, like you're probably like like I think that objectively you can make the case that you're the best player you've ever been, right? Like you have the number of changes and transformations that you've had in your career, starting with the fact that you're an outfielder, you don't have the infield thing hanging over your head anymore. Your swing is dialed in a way that it probably wasn't then. Like the path to becoming the player that you are now, like there's many years between then and now, but there's been many adjustments that's happened along the way. And it's interesting to think about how development happens at the big league level, right? Like because you're talking about those peer-to-peer conversations that were essential and remain like that. That's the fabric of the game. That's the beauty of the game, right? Like how one generation interacts with another. At the same time, we're in an era in baseball where the idea of player development being something that means minor leagues that's been transformed, right? Like there is, now we're looking at a time when player development is very much like not only thought of but structured in the big leagues. Like how would you describe the how the question of big leaguers getting better is now navigated compared to what it was like all of those many 8 years ago?
Yeah, I mean that's I could talk about it for a long time.
That's why we have you
it,
on. That's why it's a podcast.
yeah, yeah, it's I think it's an amazing conversation just because I do remember coming up in the minor leagues. When I was coming up in the minor leagues, I got drafted in 2012, and it was still very much a time where you had some fantastic hitting coaches, but it was a lot more feel based. There wasn't as much information just to help you understand as a pitcher like what was a very good pitch. As a hitter, some of the areas where you could really improve on right away, and some other things that maybe you would take a whole off season to really work on. So I do remember that time when it was like you come to the field very early and you would just hit until honestly your hands bled with blisters, just trying to feel something for that night and kind of just carried it on to the game, and hopefully it lasts for a while. I know that's how I approached a lot of my minor league career, where I had this passion to get better, but I didn't know how. And I was around a lot of good coaches that would help me, but I never fully grasped sometimes what a good swing was or a good approach or how I could improve. And, you know, I think in today's game, you have so much more information and amazing people that can help you right away with that. And if you have, a strong desire to get better and the energy and the time, you can get better at the major league level, which is, awesome, because hitting now is, I mean, talking about coming up in the minors, it's completely different. It's so much more challenging and rewarding when you do well. But yeah, it's amazing to see how far our game has come and how far I think it still can grow.
Yeah, and I think something too that a lot of people don't realize is the minor leagues is used developmentally for one, teaching the game to guys. Secondly, where you can build a swing or a process and you learn a routine. Um, you learned a lot of guys. I mean, I didn't even have an approach at the plate till I got to like double A. I was just purely
Yeah.
living off of raw talent. And then I started not competing because I was lacking that. And you build that base in the minor leagues, but you really don't fully develop till you spend a few years in the big leagues, because there's no replacement for learning how to adjust and make those moves and changes at the highest level against the highest talent, because you can't replicate that in AAA. You just can't.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And once you get to the major league level, the quality of baseball is much better. In the minor leagues, if you don't have a very efficient swing at times, you can get away with it because you're just seeing more pitches over the heart of the plate. So if you're fouling pitches off in the minor leagues, just because your swing isn't, the path isn't as great as it should be, you're going to get another pitch probably over the heart of the zone at some point, or a couple of them throughout the game. And in the major league level, sometimes you in a bat, you maybe see one pitch in the heart of the zone, and then they're working out on the edges in your cold zones a lot. So yeah, you have to make those adjustments at the major league level, and you have to be willing to just look at your video and be able to assess how you're doing and be honest with yourself. I think I've always had the ability to be very honest with watching my video compared to other video of players that I really admire and look up to and enjoy watching their game and being like, wow, that doesn't match up at all, and I need to get to work. And I've always been okay with being kind of brutally honest about my game.
So I guess you mentioned watching video, and I know that all that video has always been a part of it, right? The information's always been a part of it, and I feel like every year the information grows and grows and grows. I mean, you guys have access to literally anything you want. So I guess
Yeah,
part of the development, as we're talking about, is learning what information works for you, right? Because you can't take everything in. It's
yeah.
impossible. You flood your brain with it. So how long did it take you to figure out, all right, these are the numbers, these are the video, this is the stuff I need, and I can kind of push the other stuff aside in case I might need it?
I think I've been very fortunate to kind of come up in the age of a lot of the information. I was fortunate enough to kind of come from not having as much to, I remember for hitting, maybe around 19, 20, 21, it felt very different. It felt like on the minor league side, even there was a lot of people that could help you digest information. I remember it being kind of a lot at first, but I think everyone was kind of learning and growing around the same time and kind of understanding what would help the players, what would really pollute some thoughts and development. And I think I was fortunate to be around that time where everyone was kind of trying to figure out together. And I was talking to Alex. I just had some great coaches, be able to really pinpoint some things, some easy things right away. And I was fortunate to have really good coaches and front office guys help me figure out those things. On my own, I don't think I could have done it at all.
Whose swing do you try to replicate? And whose swing were you trying to take components of back in that time of transformation, and who do you try to take
Jackson
stuff from
Holiday.
now?
Yeah, I mean, even Jackson's swing today is he's constantly making adjustments, and I know Matt. When I played with him, he was constantly making adjustments. I think you have to be willing to do that to be successful at the major league level. And even this year for me, I started off slow a little bit off lefties, and I knew my body felt a little different. And watching video, I knew it was different. So I dug in some of the information and the Hawkeye. And if fans don't know what Hawkeye is, it basically shows your skeleton at Fenway from previous years, from this year, and we figured out in 22, which I really thought mechanically I was in a good place. Some of my best swings and things like that. We dug deep on the 22 compared to 24 in this year's video and found some interesting things. And I joke with people all the time that it is really dangerous chasing the ghost of the ghost of mechanics of years past, because your body's always changing and it really is. But if you can find some absolutes that you can try to work towards, I think it's really important. So we found some things in 22 that I was doing a lot differently this year, and I keep a pretty extensive journal of some cues and thoughts over the years, and we worked pretty hard for a couple days on trying to get back there. Sometimes that's a nice part of not playing. You
It's
can
hard when
grind
you're
in.
chasing a feeling too, and not necessarily a certain look or setup. It's like it could be a totally different setup, but it will give me the feeling I'm searching for. And that's the hard part.
Exactly. So the first game was against Martin Perez, and the mechanic showed up from 22, and we were all. I mean, I was pretty pumped about it, and fortunate enough had some results and had a good game. But it was very cool. I mean, just that's a very specific example this year. Without that, I could have just kept going and going and had, not as many results just because of my body was getting to a position where it wants to go, but it shouldn't. Um, I've had my body measured, and I sit a very certain way. I'm very tilted back. My spine is tilted. If I'm standing at the plate, it tilts back towards the catcher. So I think if fans, watch my posture when I'm hitting, I try to keep my head in front of my core when I start, just to keep my spine, you know, forward, so I can get to neutral when I land. So that's kind of just an inside look of understanding your body's a little wonky and you need to find some cues and thoughts to try to get it to neutral or where you want to go. But in 2019, I was struggling with the whole platoon thing going to the major league level. I had bigger moves and I didn't know how to control them when I wasn't playing. Will knows, like, when you don't play for a couple days, you you get in the box and you just want to have good timing. You want to stay behind the ball, and there's so many different things going on. And when you pinch hit, most of the time it's in a pretty big situation. It's you're
And a
facing a
guy's throwing
leverage
100.
lefty. You're facing a leverage lefty, and he's got explosive stuff. Most of the times, it's a 2-3 pitch mix, and you're up there, and you're like, am I even on time? So I was getting my foot down really, really early in 2019, and I met the hitting coordinator now for the Rangers, I think, Cody Atkinson, and he really, really helped me start to understand some of the moves so I could get away from just putting my foot down. So Cody Atkinson was a big one in 2019, but I was like, screw it, I'm just going to watch Troy Tulowitzki video until my eyes bleed. And I just started trying to imitate Tulo moves. And yeah, so that's kind of how it all started in 2019.
You've become a total advocate for great Rockies of throughout history now with Tulo and Matt Holliday. But
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of incredible to hear the level of detail and specificity that you're approaching this, right? Like looking at that kind of Kinatrax, like Hawkeye based look at, like, at your skeleton in the box and trying to match it up and, like, find that feel, like both that, like, that look in that field that's going to allow you to be the best version of yourself offensively. But it falls within that broader category of how development happens at the big league level now. That's super interesting to me, right? So I know that the Red Sox last year, and I'm not sure if you guys are continuing that this year, instituted kind of monthly meetings, monthly check-ins where there would be development meetings about every player on the roster once a month. And I assume that trickled into feedback that you guys were getting on a day-to-day basis, whether that is from whether that's from Pete Fatsey or whether maybe that's from Kyle Hudson talking about outfield work, or maybe I know that this year the Red Sox have introduced a new position, the Major League Director of Development, Chris Stasio. How is development structured at the big league level as you're going over ways that you can improve and keep pushing the envelope to make sure that you're not just static as like you're having a great year, but you want more, right? Like you're always pushing for different ways to improve. How's that structured now at the big league level?
Yeah, I think Will kind of touched on it a little bit earlier in this, that it is different for everyone. I feel like, if you put Alex Bregman in that scenario, he could probably digest everything and then rattle off information that they wouldn't even think about as well, just because how in depth Alex is in his process and how much he wants to get better and just how much information he can digest. Where there are some other players where they just want to know XYZ and help me with that. And that's okay because everyone's different. And I think the Red Sox have done a really good job of understanding everyone's needs to the most part, and also growing with the player, and just making sure they have everything they need, and then help them grow into, if they want more, they can. I think the fans can be confident and assured that everyone comes to the field very early every day and are, they're very hungry to get better and go about their drills and work. But also at the end of the day, the Red Sox know that we have a game most of the time at 7, and the work and the development is pretty much seamless. So a lot of the drills and things that you're doing to prepare for the game have some sort of development, which is, for me, I'd like to try to control the strike zone a little bit more. So just trying to make some pitch decisions while I'm hitting the balls and things like that. So I think every player is different, but Pete does an amazing job. I think he is really, really great at his job of balancing that, getting ready to play, but also having some sort of development in those drills and the way you go about your work. It's not just, take ground balls, take fly balls, hit some, lob BP and then go play game. It's there's a lot more to it now. And we have to. I mean, the quality of baseball is incredible. You guys see it, every night. Just the quality of pitching, the stealing, just everything in our game is it feels like every year you just see more and more incredible talent. And I think if you hear their stories and their background, it's because they spend the whole off season working on something, and they're very in tune with what they need to get better at. And every year it just is like, oh my gosh, look at this guy.
So you got my attention on the Bregman thing, right? His ability to
Yeah.
digest that much information and break it down and use it how he wants. We know the player he is, and I always say this. I say this in a respectful way. He's better than I thought he was, because
Hmm.
I know how good he was as a player in Houston, because we watched him and played against him and all that. But getting to see his process daily, not only to make himself better, but the time he puts in with teammates and coaching staff and kind of challenges everybody. Can you just take us under the hood a little bit with Alex Bregman, because he's the teammate that everybody wants.
Yeah, I think watching him from afar, you do get amazed by some of the things he can do on the field, right? Like he's hitting pull side air homers and doubles with true spin, for a guy his size every year, and you just kind of look from afar and you're like, how does he do it? Um, and I think he really is great with the fans, because I remember even a couple years ago he started posting some videos about his process about hitting, and he really got in depth with it, and it was really cool just as another player and a fan of his, just to see kind of inside his process and his drills and things like that. And um, he's got a lot of old school in him, with his approach and his hitting thoughts, and but then you blend with his scouting reports and all the information that he can um, pass on to other guys. Um, you know, but you're right. He challenges everyone to never really turn it off. When we grab dinners and things like that, he's just constantly talking about the next game, the next pitcher, defense, base running, and it's he's the ultimate baseball guy, and he never turns it off. He really doesn't. Every conversation circles back to winning the next game, winning the next at bat, and it's truly special. I mean, Will knows this season is so grueling and long, and to have somebody that passionate this far along in his career and how much he's accomplished, it's really just it's special to be around. And I know he's for a fact made some of our younger players better, and hungry, and understand like this is what greatness is. And I'm sure those guys have learned a lot from him, because I'm 34 and I've learned a lot from him already. And I feel very fortunate to have Greg be my teammate.
Well, that kind of brings it in a very interesting way full circle, right? Because we started talking about the way that you were influenced by some of the veteran teammates around you, but then acknowledging some of the structural changes that were happening in the game, where how coaching happens in a structured way. But then we're back at that peer to peer aspect. Look, the Red Sox, the offense has been clicking. You guys had gotten off to a start that was, I think, a little bit puzzling. I think that offensively, there was some inconsistency through the first couple of weeks of the season, some big punch out numbers. The last couple of weeks of April, you guys have kind of taken off and really seem like as a group, like you're starting to see approaches locking in very quickly. How much do you see kind of a growth culture, like a collective growth culture forming that's allowing you guys to get better? And if you're seeing that happen, then what does that mean for the potential arc of the season moving forward?
Yeah, I think you talked about earlier in the year, and I think in spring training it felt different. I don't know how you guys felt about it, but in spring training it felt different. There was expectations, and we welcome those expectations because it's just Boston, hardworking city. Fans come out every night. We haven't played baseball that we know that the Red Sox are capable of doing, so we had those expectations. If I'm going to be honest, and we wanted to live up to them. I think I'm just speaking from my personal opinion of kind of what was going on early in the year, and I think guys were super prepared and hungry and just pressing. I think if we watched some of those games, the strikeout numbers were up, the chase was way up, and I think everyone wanted to have an amazing result every at bat to put the team back in the game or to win that game, and it all came from a very good place because we just wanted to win and we were just trying to do too much. So I think Bregman had a meeting. We all kind of had a meeting. We just we need to kind of just settle down and put the ball in play. Kind of very all cliche things, but I think it started to click as of late, and then guys kind of did the whole process and started to get some nice results. And I think now you see a lot of guys just kind of calm down and understand what the lineup is capable of. You see some really good hitters, 1 to 9. And then you have guys like Hammy off the bench and Romy and Sabes has had some really nice at bats as well. It's just it's a good group. It's a hungry group, but I think you see guys a little bit more relaxed and settled and kind of Will can talk about it. It's not fun when you look up the scoreboard in the first 20 at bats and you're batting something that you don't want to be batting. You want to get 3 hits in 1 at bat. That's really, sometimes you go up to the plate and you're like, man, you look at those numbers and you're like, I need to do something more. And that's just early on in the year. And sometimes players don't like talking about it because, I don't know, they beat around the bush. But it's a real human thing where you want to start off the year well and play winning baseball. And obviously Boston media is a big one. And you just want to play well. And we were just pressing too much, I think.
Well, it seems like the pressing has given way to a pretty impressive overall run, and obviously you're off to a terrific start as part of that. But Rob, really appreciate the insight into some of the team dynamics that you're seeing so far. There's a reason why you're you may be the first player officially asked to be our prime guest for multiple episodes of 310 to Left. So that is not a coincidence. You've earned that place in 310 to Left lore. So really appreciate you finding time to join us. And I hope that we haven't exhausted your arms by asking you to hold your iPhone for a full 30 minutes.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rob. Back on 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers. And Will, that was great. That was great stuff from Rob. have to say that hearing about like he's so keenly aware of the interesting processes that have evolved in baseball over the course of this era. But it is super interesting to hear about Alex Bregman and what he's like behind the scenes. What have been your impressions? What strikes you in hearing about the Bregman effect going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I've always heard about it. And obviously, we see the finished product, right? We see the back of the baseball card. We see the highlights on TV, especially as an opposing player, which he was in Houston for so long. But getting to see him on an everyday basis is just, it's unbelievable because it takes so much work to be a good Major League Baseball player. And for you to put in the work to build yourself as a player and to continue to adapt and adjust and on the fly be as good as he is on a daily basis on both sides of the ball. So I think what stands out the most to me is that he's able to do that, but also do it for multiple teammates. I mean, there's so many guys I've talked to that say, "Oh yeah, like we'll sit down to, eat before the game," and he'll start talking about my at bats from 3 days previous and like this 2-1 pitch, what my body was doing, and just how bought in he is as a teammate and to their success, because he knows if everyone around him, he makes everyone around him better, then the team is a better ball club. But even hearing guys on the coaching staff say Alex Bregman challenges me every day, like he will question the things we do because he thinks there can maybe be a little bit better way to do things and make us a better team. So just being able to sit back and watch that happen now that you know that's going on, and you can start to pick and watch like, oh, that's what he's doing right now. Oh, he's sitting with that guy on the bench. Are we sitting with the assistant hitting coach and they're going through this, probably not even talking about his at bats, probably someone else's. It's like he's a player coach. So he's like a player analyst. It's the amount of things that he's able to do to make the entire team better is Pedroia-ish, but
Yeah.
maybe even further than that because of this new age of baseball and all the information that he has to have in between his ears.
It's interesting because that was exactly the guy who came to mind for me when thinking about it, and that's pretty remarkable because Bregman, for obvious reasons, one of them being size and middle infield position, like he had locked in on Dustin Pedroia as early as Dustin's college career when he was at Arizona State, and he had always there had been a kind of natural kinship, yeah. So that idea of him. It takes a certain kind of craziness, I think, as a baseball player in order to be able to have the time to not only focus on
Obsession
self-improvement,
is the
but have
word.
that extra time. Yeah. Yeah.
You have
And
to be
Alex Bregman
obsessed
is,
with success, and not only the result, you have to be obsessed with the process. That's where people get lost, is so many people think it takes to be a good player to be obsessed with success and finding results, but that's not how you become Alex Bregman. You fall in love with the process and the daily grind, and you can tell he loves that.
yeah, he literally yesterday, after having a 3-for-5 game against the Blue Jays, in which he hit his sixth homer of the year, talked about the fact that his focus this year has been falling in love with the work, and really being precisely that, very process based. And I don't know, it does feel like even in this early stretch of the season that the Red Sox as a group have been able to make a collective adjustment where they've been able to become more process based, and all of a sudden you're seeing these fantastic offensive games for them starting to stack up.
Yeah, it's amazing when, as a player, you focus on just doing A, B, and C right. And, small things, working on whether it's, really breaking down the nitty gritty of an at bat. Like, I want to dominate 2 strike counts, or I want to be super focused 0-0. Whether you're Sadon and you still want to be a very aggressive player, but you need to be more selective. So it's almost like you take apart the at bat and you take your focus to one pitch at a time, right? Because it's so hard, it's so easy as a player to go into your at bat thinking about the entire at bat and the entirety of it and what results are there or may not be there, instead of literally saying, okay, this pitch, this is what I'm doing. This guy has a very good sweeper. He throws it 60% of the time. In 0-0 counts, he throws it 80% of the time. I'm looking for a sweeper here. All right, here comes a fastball. I have to take it. right? Even though it's a good pitch to hit, I'm on time for this. So it's all the little things like that. And then you move on to 0-1. Okay, what am I trying to do here? So I think Alex does a really good job of teaching guys how to pick apart the game and focus on those little small things that can turn into the big result that they're looking for.
Well, he's not the only one who does so. Will, you do a great job of focusing on the little things and teaching us how to take apart the game. It has been great having you on 310 to Left. We're going to say bye for now, but we'll look forward to being back with another episode soon. Maybe it'll be me. Maybe it'll be Will. Maybe it'll be Tom Karen. I don't know. There's a great mystery that never know. We'll see you soon.